From the Beaver County Auto Studios, it's a Penguins Quickie, because sometimes you don't need the full thing. A Quickie is just a lot more fun. Hi, I'm Dan Kingerski. Let's get to the Penguins injuries and the practice report from Friday, because there was a lot of news coming out of it. First of all, Zach Aston-Reese, Justin Schultz, Evgeni Malkin, and Matt Murray. They were all on the ice on Friday. Let's first start with Justin Schultz. Boy, I think physically he's just about there. Obviously, you're on the shelf that long. You have to build up strength and endurance. I think that's where he's at. Body-wise, he could probably play tonight. If this were Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final and they needed him, I think he could go. But obviously, there's no point to chucking him in before he's ready. He's still listed as day-to-day. Matt Murray. Here's the big news. Murray may only miss one game. Thursday night might have only been it. Murray said that he feels like he can go. He feels like he'll play on this road trip for sure. Yeah, for sure, he said. So the Penguins might even have Matt Murray for Saturday night against Tampa Bay. They'll probably make that determination after a morning skate on Saturday morning. Obviously, hockey injuries are always a little bit tough to predict and get into. Evgeni Malkin didn't confirm a setback, but the Penguins did put him on IR on February 8th, which is Friday. This means that I think Malkin has to be out a little while, so we won't see him in Tampa Bay. A little bit disappointing. We've seen him practice. He practiced again on Friday. Also, some news. Malkin confirmed he was not injured in the fight you see here with Stamkos. Now, Pittsburgh Hockey Now had reported Malkin suffered a hand injury against Tampa Bay. The subset to that report, some of the Penguins organization in the hours and day following that injury believed it occurred or was exacerbated in the fight. Malkin confirmed that it was not suffered in the fight. Obviously, we'll never know if it was exacerbated in the fight or not. Doctors gave him some pain pills after the first period because on that second shift when Dan Girardi stepped into him at the blue line, that's when the injury occurred and he needed a little bit of help. He said the next day he felt so bad, obviously the pain. So Malkin will be out a little while. Also, Zach Aston-Reese, he'll be out a little while longer. He was in the no contact on Friday. He hasn't been seen since the fight a few weeks ago with Colton Sceviour of the Florida Panthers. Although Aston-Reese, he also confirmed the injury wasn't because of him punching Sceviour in the head or Sevier in the head. It was perhaps the doctor felt when the two fell. And that's when Aston-Reese suffered his upper body injury. Obviously, his hand, his wrist, something in there. I think we've gotten to all of the Penguins' injuries. Now we can talk a little bit about the Penguins' lines. Now, I always default to the team position and work from there. I think that's important for you and I to have that communication where I am going to try to figure out what they're doing, what they're thinking, the hows and the whys, and then we can move forward from there. Because, well, generally speaking, I trust that those folks are a little smarter than me and you, and they generally should know what they're doing. So they get the benefit of the doubt. Now, having said all of that, what the Penguins seem intent and just absolutely hell-bent on doing is Bukestad with Sidney Crosby. We saw it for 2 awful periods on Thursday night. It just did not work. For a myriad of reasons, Bukestad's newness to the system, Sidney Crosby's 100 miles an hour, I don't necessarily think plays to Bukestad's game. And let's be honest. Bukestad is not a 100-mile-an-hour player. And to play on Crosby's line, he's going to essentially have to go to the net and fish out pucks. Well, he is 6'6" and 220 pounds, and he's good at those things. That marginalizes a lot of his hockey smarts. And it may have worked in Florida. Bob Bugner and his teammates said, he's going to be a great right wing beside Sidney Crosby. Well, what the heck about the third-line center? What are the Penguins going to do? And that's why I can tell you with all sincerity. I mean, the job looks like it's going to fall to Jared McCann, unless Crosby and Bukestad just do not work to a conclusion of the Penguins organization. Now, we'll talk about McCann in just a few seconds. What I want to I still struggle for the words. Once again, shoehorning a player into a role they want, not necessarily what might work best. Sometimes logic and hockey don't go together, and the Penguins are using a bit of logic, the same as they did with Derek Brassard. Florida grabbed Brassard and chucked him on the left wing of their second line. Why didn't the Penguins ever do that? Why didn't Brassard ever side saddle Evgeni Malkin? Now, we did write about that on Pittsburgh Hockey Now, so maybe I'm a little bit biased, but what could have been? The Penguins could have been shopping for a third-line center with a fantastic left winger in Derek Brassard. Look at the hops that he had in Florida on Thursday night. Penguins fans were never really treated to that Derek Brassard, were they? So here again, I think the Penguins might be making that same mistake with Nick Bukestad. Putting him on the right wing where he was good in Florida. Not really top six quality, if you ask me, but still pretty good on that right wing. But when they put him at center with Phil Kessel, there's actually been a little something. Now, there was one really bad game. But let's be honest here. When you're dealing with Phil Kessel, there's going to be lots of really bad games. There are just some nights that Kessel licks the stamp, mails it in. He might pick up an assist or two, so the scoring sheet looks pretty good. But you're not getting the good Phil Kessel. To hold Bukestad responsible for that, or to say it doesn't work, that's when the Penguins are getting a little bit ahead of themselves. Because we'll come back to Jared McCann here. Here was a guy, former first-round pick, 22 years old. A lot of potential ahead of him. Already a very good defensive center. He was Florida's fourth-line center. You can't go from Florida's fourth-line center to the Penguins' third-line center. That seems like really falling upwards, doesn't it? Now, McCann might well be the Penguins' third-line center of the future. He might really evolve into that role and really be good at it. But the Penguins have to win right now. They might not have a next year as a Stanley Cup contender. I mean, let's be blunt, honest about it. Right now, the motor is sputtering, trying to get to the finish line. They're just 3 points ahead of Carolina for that final playoff spot in the Eastern Conference. That should send chills down their spine and maybe yours as well. That's where the Penguins are. And to kind of put square pegs in round holes yet again, well, that's just going to be a recipe for disaster. Because even if Bukestad works beside Crosby, how much better is that top line going to be? How much more can Sidney Crosby score with Bukestad? Versus how much can the Penguins lose by not having Bukestad on that third line with Phil Kessel? Now, Penguins general manager Jim Rutherford wants to wait, wants to get Schultz back, wants to get Malkin back before he dips a toe in the trade waters. That's prudent. That's certainly smart. But that's only if the Penguins are prudent and smart as well. And right now, I just don't get it. And I think that's maybe the best way to phrase it. So when you say you don't get it, I'm going to agree with you and say I don't get it either. This has been a Penguins Quickie inside the Beaver County Auto Studios. I'm Dan Kingerski.